All right. Hi, everyone. Hello. So how's the bill so far? When I walked in, I see all of you all huddling and working together in the different rooms. It sounds like you all are up to a great start already today. So that's wonderful. And it's a beautiful day here today. And today I am privileged to be here with a wonderful panel of female leaders. And we're going to chit chat about career journeys and the different experiences we've had. And we're also going to talk about how the 48 and 48 programs help in helping you, because I know many of you are repeat volunteers as well into this particular program. So thank you for doing that. Today we have a fantastic panel for you. We're going to start from the far end. We have Joanne Herold here with us, and she is an author, a professor of strategic marketing at her company, GCS, and formerly she was the CMO of Honey Baked Ham, which I think you all just had for lunch today. Next, we have Wendy Frazier. She is the VP and Chief Technology Officer of the Weather Company. And then this morning we had some weather, so I did get my running out alerting me of the situation, so thank you. And then next, we have Shanita Drake. She is the Technology Director at State Farm here. And then last but not least, we have our gracious host, Sunita Sharma. She is the Director of Solution Ownership and Technology Enablement right here at Slalom Build. So thanks for having all of us, and thank you all for being here for such a wonderful event. I heard that we're going to build 55 fantastic websites for nonprofits for this women's bill. Well, we're going to get right to it. So ladies, tell us a little bit about your career journeys and how did you get to where you are today in your roles? And then I'll start with Joanne.
So I started my career journey as a star at McDonald's. And what that meant was I gave the birthday parties and wore the Hamburglar costume and ran the drive-through window. But what it did do was to create a lifelong love for working with brands and in the hospitality industry. And so I worked for Honey Baked Ham, that was mentioned twice, and then worked at Arby's Restaurant Group as VP of Brand and Communications, and then was head of marketing globally for a company called Interface, which actually is carpet tiles, flooring. And then now I'm consulting and teaching and having a lot of fun doing a lot of nonprofit work, and actually on the board of 48 and 48.
Well, good afternoon. So nice to see all of you still awake and standing going through all the bills. But my career journey, it started very similar. I guess there's a commonality with fast food and restaurant chains. But I started out at Chick-fil-A, was actually in the owner-operator program at the time. And I just finished my master's degree, but I navigated over to Chick-fil-A because that was my first love. And I realized, I said, well, I just finished a master's in computer science. Let's see if this degree, what can it really do for me? So I went to the Weather Company. I've been with the Weather Company for about 23 years. I've had a number of different roles at the Weather Company. Started out as a software engineer, as a developer, was writing code for companies like Yahoo back in the day when they were just getting started and working with weather assets. And then I navigated to a number of different careers and opportunities at Weather. And I quickly realized that I enjoyed developing, but I really enjoyed leading. So I quickly identified a roadmap and plan that would get me to where I needed to go next in my journey. And now the code that I used to write, the website I used to write code for, I lead the team that operates that now.
Well, I'm gonna break the fast food trend. I've actually been at State Farm for 25, almost 26 years.
You got me.
And I started out as a call center rep. I started out taking phone calls after hours for agents while also going to school full time. So I was going to school for computer information systems, so I knew I wanted to be in technology. I am a technologist at heart. And so throughout my career, I just navigated by filling in spaces and gaps where I saw a need, and I filled it regardless of title or maybe job assignment. I just looked for opportunities to advance, to learn, and from there I became a technology analyst once I completed my degree, to team lead, to business analyst, and that's where I realized while technology and coding is great, it's fun, but I really love leading people and getting solutions through teamwork, collaboration, communication. And so I began my leadership journey and then to manager, technology manager, and now technology director. So not a straight path, but definitely just taking step by step.
In my case, I think I have been in technology for over 20 years. Again, there's somebody who risen through the ranks. But I think what has been very unique for my career has been I got to work across continent and countries. So I got to work and stay in country like Japan, etc. And I think what has been most interesting is that to try and absorb some of the local culture and then seeing how the local culture actually impacts the work culture. And that has been something very, very interesting that I've seen through my career.
Well, that's wonderful. And the journey to get here, it's a long road sometimes.
Yes.
And I'm sure that you all face some unique challenges. And can you talk about some of them with us and how you overcome them? And I'll start with Sunita.
Yeah, I think for me the challenges have been, is that it was just, if you look at it, it's not something that there have been people those who walked this path much earlier. It was not something that we were trying to look at uncharted path. But I think what has been challenges where I think some subtle biases, some perceived stereotypes, I think those have existed. I think having to overcome those has been something that I have to look at. I think what has worked for me is making network outside and inside of the organization, creating those allies and having those allies work for me, and then also at the same time always showing up as somebody who's trying to be a better version of herself all the time. That's something that's really, really worked for me in these challenges.
Oh, challenges, my gosh. How long do we have here? Being a female in STEM, oftentimes you are the only in the room. Being a minority in technology, oftentimes you're the only in the room. And as I mentioned, I entered technology very early, very young. And so oftentimes I was the youngest in the room. And so as you can imagine, not feeling like you have a voice because your peers have more experience, they are male and they are white. So typically it's how do I build relationships and connections with individuals that allow my voice to be heard? How do I build, as you mentioned, alliances so that I can get my idea on the table? And so I'm happy that we're beginning to change that narrative. There are more women in STEM, there are more minorities in STEM, and that is something that I'm so very passionate about because I want to change someone else's experience from what I had to endure. And so really the challenge has just been, how do you stand out? How do you get your voice heard? And how do you build relationships with individuals that are different than you? And while it's a challenge, I count it also as a blessing because I think that makes me an even better leader because I can see through someone else's lens. I am open to someone else's perspective. So I feel like the challenges in a way have made me stronger.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I think the biggest part from a challenge and career perspective is it's okay to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because being the only person in the room, you are going to be uncomfortable a lot. And I had to realize that very early on in my career that being the only one in the room, you have to be okay being uncomfortable. Because a lot of times your opinions, your feedback, it takes a while for your voice to get heard. But once you establish your voice, establish your brand, then you establish your dominance and your presence in that space. So my feedback is the challenges, while they are there, the women you see on this panel, we've overcome those challenges. And we're here to unlock the opportunities for many others to continue to do that.
And I'm gonna echo what almost everybody said. I started in the workforce a long time ago and I was often the youngest, only woman. And back in the day, there weren't any, it was, you had to fend for yourself. And, I was the marketing girl, and which is so derogatory, but then I ended up becoming the first woman C-suite person at a company, and I was the only woman, not only in the room, but in the few in the company. And the CEO said, God, he noticed it. And I didn't even really think about it that much in the work day-to-day until we traveled. And then the guys had golf games and teams and sports, and so I felt a little left out of the conversation. One time the CEO said to me, he said, God, you are the only woman in the room. And I said, I sure am. And he said, well, I want to do something about it. And I said, well, you're the person. And so he did. He actually started recruiting more women board members, more women in the C-suite. And so sometimes you just got to have that relationship and tap them on the shoulder and say, look around, see what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think, breaking through kind of the C-suite is one thing, and then the other thing is really, how do you even begin? We are all in very male-dominated industries, whether it's engineering, technology, just overall business. And what's your advice for women that really want to raise their profiles in their companies? And then also, what are some resources that could be available for them?
I'll start and then I'm sure we'll echo. I heard some of you guys say you got your master's, and which is, I think, helps a lot. Also, just being prepared, knowing the business, knowing the numbers, and speaking the language with your peer set and the people above, and then relationships.
Yeah, relationships is key. I mean, just networking, especially when you're new to a company, get on your intranet and meet individuals. Like IBM is 350,000 person company. If you get the right 100 and within your Rolodex, you can navigate and cover a lot throughout your career. But networking is key, and don't be afraid to learn. Like, always push yourself. Learning. I mean, every day I learn something new. We're back commuting to the office a couple of days a week. We're hybrid now at work. And I spend a lot of times listening to podcasts or listening to various things that kind of jar my thinking a little bit differently, because my day-to-day is going to be mostly technology and evolving your systems and services and the strategy for that. But thinking about the other components that feed into that to allow you to think differently.
I would say exactly what you're doing today. Get experiences outside of your organization. Build networks outside of your organization. They are important inside, but your exposure to different individuals, even in different industries, can help you tremendously as you build solutions inside of your org. So exactly what you're doing today, I echo education, not being afraid to learn, not being afraid to just step into something that is new, something that is different. I would get a board of directors, someone who's gonna sometimes tell you what you want to hear. Another person is going to tell you what you need to hear. Someone who's going to tell you what you don't want to hear. And so just make sure you surround yourself with individuals that you can receive feedback from. So mentorship is important. And if you worry about, are they going to think I'm a bother? Leaders love to mentor. It is the part of our job that is not business solution oriented. It's human connection. So reach out to that leader that you see, that you admire, that they do something that you're like, wow, I would love to learn how to do that. Connect with them and just ask for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and see where that goes. Mentorship doesn't have to be a monthly meeting for a year. It could be sporadic. It could be quarterly. So venture out and build the relationships in different ways.
I think echoes are similar, but I think I would also say that be a lifelong student, be curious and continue to learn. And there will be situations that you'll have to probably unlearn as well. So be ready for learning as well as unlearning both. And also, be comfortable with the uncomfortable that I think Wendy just mentioned, where, always look for things that are outside your comfort zone. Growth is going to be at the edge of the comfort zone or beyond. Okay, growth is not going to be when you are in your comfort zone. So I think just focus on those. I think those are some things that I would say that will definitely take you far ahead.
Now, we talk about being uncomfortable, and it's hard to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And, how would you handle a particular situation where you want your voice to be heard. And we all have the situation where the first time where it's in a room of discomfort, and then we have something critically important to say. And, can you share with us how you would approach that particular situation, and then talk through how you personally get over the discomfort and then practice that skill?
I'll start. Also, for me, it's just always being authentic and bringing my genuine self to any conversation. And again, early on, as women, we're always taught to kind of second guess ourselves, and we probably speak in our heads a little too much before we actually make the statement. But just being comfortable just with yourself and just always being authentic and genuine with what you do. I remember a few years ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, my previous boss had an opening. There was a CTO role available at the time. And I was on a team with all males, all white males. And at the time, of the team of 10, 8 applied for the role. And my manager pulled me to a side and he said, well, why didn't you apply? I said, well, I looked at the credentials and I can check about 60% of it off the list, but that 40% I can't. He said, well, all your peers applied and they didn't check half the stuff off the list. So again, just getting out of your own head and out of your space and just going for it and just being genuine with your approach.
I would say practice. The first time you do anything, it's going to be scary. But the more you practice, the better you are at it and you become more comfortable. Earlier in my career, I would go, hey, I have an idea. And the next time I was like, hey, I have something to say. And now today I'm like, excuse me, I have something to share. And so over time, you begin to get comfortable. So just practice and even lean toward your peers and say, hey, in that meeting, this is what I was thinking. What do you think about that? You'll get that encouragement like, why didn't you say something? You should have said something in the meeting. And then those become your allies that say, hey, Shanita, didn't you mention to me, didn't we have a conversation? So they will help you get comfortable as well. But believe in yourself, have the confidence, start out slow and learn. Also read the room. Recognize who's the influencer in a room or in any conversation. Also know how they navigate the room and use those examples and just try them out.
I think validate your idea outside, if you have to, but have the confidence that even if you have self-doubt, raise your hand. I think that's most important, and it is okay to be wrong. Yeah. It is okay to be wrong. I think that's very, very important, is that you raise your hand, you get, rebuttal on your idea, and, you go back and rework. That is fine, but, not raising the hand is probably a challenge.
And that's part of your growth.
Yes, that's absolutely part of growth.
I just want to add, men have a tendency at the table, they'll and the women sometimes will lean back. And so I'd say for women, I love that, excuse me. Also, I try to use humor look at reading the room, but also looking for whoever's got that eye contact and bringing some levity, especially in a big meeting that might be tense. It's, lighten the air a little bit.
One thing I'd like to add is for the women in the room, if you have a peer who you see is sharing an idea, sometimes it's as simple as co-signing the idea for them. We have to be mindful to kind of help one another. Yes.
Encourage each other.
And help get that idea on the table.
Yeah, I love that. And Joanne, what you said about us not taking up space, because oftentimes, there's a couple row of seats and then there's the big table and then we're like, I'll take that one right there in the corner. And then I'm going to start typing notes. And then, I've had times before where people are like, oh, you're the designated note taker. I'm like, no, you whiteboard. Here's a pen for you, right? And then we have to take up space. And an author that's really great is Amy Cuddy, talking about just really own your space, and then just in your mind, when you sit down in a room, just mentally picture yourself taking up as much room as you can. And then how would you sit? Like, what's your posture right now for all of you? If you said, okay, I want to sit I want to be present, I want to take as much as room as I need to, for me. And so she had some great TED Talks on that particular topic. And when you mentioned that, I remember the power pose, right? You do your power pose before you get into something, and then you feel the power. And so much for confidence, and then techniques that you can use in practice. And we talked a lot about mentorship, and we all have sponsors. And if you ladies can talk a little bit about what's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, and then also, what was the best piece of mentor advice that you've ever gotten?
So I'll go. A mentor is somebody who helps you along the way. A sponsor is somebody who has the authority to get you there. So mentors are super important, and it's important to mentor your sponsors. They are gold as far as, and back in the day, a long time ago, I did something I'm not supposed to do and cold called them and asked them if they'd be my mentor. And she said yes. And her name is Halo Model Mog, and she's CEO of Woodruff Arts now, but at the time she was in food. Anyway, Sheryl Sandberg would say, don't do that, but I say, do it. She ultimately hired me to work at Arby's, and then we've just through that become lifelong friends. And I'd say her advice would be, go for it, go for that job, be the one, even if you don't have everything, apply for it and see where it takes you.
A mentor is somebody who are with you as part of your execution, so they're part of your development team, etc. Whereas sponsors are somebody who probably have the signing authorities as well. So I think that's another difference.
Well, and also the connection too.
Yes.
The sponsor is the connected tissue that's going to help evolve your career. And a lot of times they may not have the signing power, but they can definitely connect you to who does.
Yep.
And that's where you want to get to, is make that connection.
So my response would be related. So mentor, definitely someone that you seek out who can give you advice, be your solid counsel. Your sponsor is the person who will bam their fist on the desk for you because they believe in you that much and they have the connection to make things happen. And so the best mentoring advice I received is make someone want to beat their fist on the desk for you. So that's what I try to do.
There's actually one additional role, which is the influencer, like you were mentioning earlier. Because sometimes the most important decisions about your career ever, you're not in the room even when that decision gets made. I'm sure, Wendy, when you interviewed, and then all the peers with you interview along with that particular process, and then people got in a room and started talking about you, talking about your peers. And it may not be your mentor there, it may not be your sponsor there, because it could be in a totally different department, different group, that they don't have that type of extended reach. But when it comes down to it, it's really, how do you get exposed to other areas? How are you helpful? How do you add value? And then be able to do that consistently and authentically. And so I'm sure you ladies exude that authenticity and then do it every day. And then so, kind of thinking back about just some great female leaders that you look up to. What are some of the female leaders that you look up to in your lives, and what type of thoughts and ideals that they really permeated with you?
If I could start, I think there are multiple, leaders that I have looked up to, even people like my mother, grandma, etc., how they have navigated their life. But I think one name, if I had to take, I would probably take Indira Nooyi, ex-CEO of PepsiCo. I think what resonates very well with me about her journey is that she came from a different country, settled into a very different country, got into an industry which was completely male-dominated, created her own mark, and some of the things that she brought to the industry, like a business performance with a purpose, how she navigated her. While she was climbing the corporate ladder, she was also raising a young family, and how she kind of used her family and her extended family as her support structure to make sure that she was kind of in the right place from family structure. I think lastly, if I just look at it, she kind of says, these are the 5 C's of leadership that she likes to follow, and she says one is competency. There is nothing without competency. Second, she says, is your courage and confidence for anything that you need, your courage and confidence. Third is communication, which is taking the bad news, right news, making sure clear, etc. So, and then she also says is around consistency. And last and not the least, she says compassion. There is nothing that, which is beyond compassion. So some of these things that I have looked at her, I think those are something that resonate really, really well with me. So I kind of generally can tend to look at, and she recently came out with her book, which says it's all about me, and I think that's something that I've gone ahead and read. So that's something that resonated very well with me.
Wow, that I'm thinking, okay, leader that I admire most. So for me, I would probably say my grandmother, who was not in leadership, who was a service worker, but just her perseverance, her determination, her dedication, qualities that I lean to in leaders that inspire me are just really good humans. They treat people fairly. They are compassionate, like you said, as well as someone who is driven and determined and optimistic. Optimism will get you a very, very long way. That is one trait that I try to surround myself around, because there's enough head talk going on internally. And so you just really need to surround yourself with people who can bring the life or breathe life into a situation and into your future. So.
Well, I feel like I'm at the Oscars or the Grammys, and I have to say my mom and grandma first. But it did inspire me and had so much of an influence on me in my life. But in the current, just the past few years, the leader that had inspired me the most is the previous CEO of IBM. So just to understand the connection, I work for and I lead the technology team for the weather company. The weather company was acquired by IBM about 6-7 years ago. So our parent company is IBM. Jenny Romanetti was the previous CEO of IBM. And she has a really compelling book out right now that I'm reading. It's called Good Power. And it talks about the way she was able to navigate her career to the C-suite. She was the first female CEO of IBM. And the way that she was able to navigate that journey, have a family, have a career, and do it with positive intent. So I would strongly encourage you to either pick up the Cliff Notes or grab the book.
And I'm gonna use my mom. I'm gonna start with her, but then I've had great leaders along the way, and men and women, and I'd say the traits of both are transparency. It's they've got your back. Communication. It's where they're heading as far as vision, and then good people. Love their families, love the people they work with. So I think you can have both great men and women, bosses and leaders.
I love the book reference and, how does she get there? And one question that I personally dislike on a women's panel is really the question of how do you have work-life balance? How do you do it all? Because when it's an all-male panel, guess what? Nobody, I've never heard anybody ask an all-male panel this is, how do you do it all? And so how do you approach your leadership in life? And that's my question to you all, instead of asking the other dreaded question that nobody should ask that.
Be grounded in what your priorities are. For me, it is faith, family, friends, then work. And so as long as I keep them in alignment, knowing what drives me, my reasons why are my 2 daughters. And so as long as I keep that before me, everything else kind of falls into place. I have deadlines just like everyone else and critical projects, but if baby girl has gymnastics, guess where mom is gonna be? I'm gonna be at gymnastics. Delegation is your friend. Find someone else who could do it, because at the end of the day, you have to know what's gonna matter to you the most. So that's really how I do it, is by picking what's my priority and making sure I stay in alignment. And that's not a 100% consistent. There will be ebbs and flows, but the goal is to try to get back in that alignment as much as possible.
if I could just add to what Shannon just said, is that I think you need to balance life. It's just not balancing work life. It's you've got to balance life, and I think at the same time you have to have a meaningful and purposeful life, and not just work. So work is part of your life, and making sure that you're keeping yourself as priority as well along with your family. You always wanted to climb that particular mountain. Make sure that you have one life to live. Make sure that priority is there somewhere. So then making sure that you have all those priorities set, and that is probably where you probably have a purposeful and meaningful life.
Yeah, and just balancing your time, being purposeful with your time. A lot of times we have a schedule, but we don't follow the schedule. So when your schedule ends, when 6 p.m. comes, sometimes I have to purposely close the laptop, turn the phone off. I have to shift to family. And I would say during the pandemic, it actually was something that I focused on a lot. And I kept, even as we, now have moved past this, you got to be intentional with your time and make sure you're developing and devoting that time where you should be. So no, it's okay to turn off, it's okay to balance, but you don't have to do it all. You don't have to do it all in one day. There's 24 hours in a day, balance that time and do what you can at work, but then make sure you're just as purposeful, not only for your family. I have 2 kids, they're everything to me.
Yes.
My son is ready for spring break to start tomorrow. He's ready to go with mom on the trip, but just being purposeful with your time and being purposeful with where you spend your time and your dedication and just go from there. But be selfish with your time and also spend it on you as well. Family is very important, but you are just as important. Because if you don't invest in yourself, then you're not going to be good at work and you're not going to be, just as good to your family. So make sure you're dedicating that time to yourself as well.
Can I just add one thing? As women, we do feel like we have to do it all and feel an immense amount of guilt if we aren't doing it. So do yourselves a favor, ask for help. Yes. Let your friends help you. Outsource items if you can. It's okay. You're only one person, and so you can't possibly do it all yourself. So like you said, be intentional about how you spend your time. And sometimes that means planning for someone else to do it. And it's okay however they do it as long as it's done. It doesn't have to be the way that you would have done it. So just thought I'd throw that out there. I am so very guilty of it.
Just be kind to yourself.
Yes, that's okay. Yes.
Just be kind to yourself.
I want to give a quick shout out to Jeff Hillemeyer with 48 and 48. He's got a great purpose, and so he, for me, actually is a mentor as far as writing down purpose, making sure the important rocks are scheduled. And so I encourage you, he's got some great books out, read those, and to really be purposeful about how you spend your time too.
Well, Shanita, you talked about your daughters, and we all have daughters, nieces, granddaughters. What do you think the world holds for them, and what type of advice would you have for them if you could actually give advice to your younger teen self?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
If I could go back in time.
Yeah, you could go back in time.
And tell my younger self, do it afraid. I would tell myself, it doesn't matter. Everyone is not going to like you no matter what it is that you do. So do it afraid and be okay with not getting that 100% mark. 80, 90, and 70 are just fine as well. So I would alleviate some of the pressure to be perfect or to fit exactly into this mold or to always get everything right. You learn from the mishaps and the missteps. So I would encourage her to just be kind and do it afraid. You might be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what is here today, like join opportunities such as 4848. I mean, I'm kicking myself. I was in Girl Scouts for many years, so I probably would have not developed and devoted so much time there and should have been more involved with other capabilities, other networking opportunities, other STEM opportunities, so that you're better prepared for the future. Because again, you learn the most in middle school as far as for your career. When you get to high school, it's too late. So again, having that autonomy and that focus so that you're ready for your next chapter. Nothing against Girl Scouts, by the way. This is training.
And if I could just add each one of you will have your journey, which is going to be unique.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you're not. I think that at least if I look at myself, I put so much pressure on myself that I'm not growing as fast as some of the other people are growing. Okay, then I think later on I realized that my journey, my circumstances were different, and I think I could only move forward in that pace. And then I think what I did do was I was waiting for the goal to be achieved, but every little achievement that I was not celebrating each one of them. So I would, if I just look at myself today, I would say, if I go back, I would say that every time I kind of cross the hoop, I would like to go back and celebrate and open up champagne bottle or whatever. Okay? But making sure that I enjoy the journey and not just wait for the destination. I mean, that's probably what I would say.
I love that too. It's very nice.
Honestly, I'd say just for me, get out of the comfort zone, take risks. That's, somebody mentioned it. That's where, you mentioned it. That's where the growth happens. It's take risks, be kind when you're taking them to yourself.
And be unapologetic.
Yeah,
Like, go for it.
be a badass.
Yeah, be a badass.
Yeah.
I love that. Be kind, be unapologetic, don't be afraid, and don't be too hard on yourself.
Right.
That's,
Celebrate.
celebrate yourself and celebrate all of you being here today. Now, think about kind of inside your companies. You all work for large companies before, and there's a lot of kind of talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion across the board, and a lot of companies promote it. Do you think we're doing enough? And how can we do even more to make sure that we have a great organization of balanced talent and diversity that's rich?
Take action.
Yeah.
We've all been to the company-sponsored talks and conversations. We know why it's important, but take action. For me, it is mentoring outside of my company in the elementary schools. And it's funny you said middle school, because initially we were targeting high school students to have STEM curriculums and have opportunities for girls to enter into STEM. And so I see the need to start that pipeline a lot earlier, and even in the elementary school. For me, representation is so important. I am, because I saw someone else and realized, oh, if she can do it, then I can do it too. So mentoring is very important. And I think that's where you get to the DEI, because most elementary and middle school kids, they haven't really formed those biases yet. And so they're very open and they're very authentic in their curiosity, their willingness to partner and collaborate, their willingness to try things even though they may fail. And so as we're talking about the DEI landscape, for me, it's getting into the schools so that students can see someone that looks like them, that understand maybe their perspective or where they come from, and begin to create solutions within my organization that meet the needs of those anomalies.
I think creating something similar, it has to start early. It has to start from schools, local communities, etc. I think, and then getting them to get exposure through those community, whether it is a field trip to an industry, whether it is just going to a factory to see how a car is made. Why can't, and getting them to start thinking and dreaming. Why can't you be a Formula One driver one day? Why can't you be one of the best archer of the country, etc. So some of those things, and then I think creating some support structure around it where they can continue that exposure as they go on the journey. I think that's probably where I feel we need to provide support.
Yeah, and getting involved with your company as well, right? Every company has an employee resource group. Be involved, be connected, be a part of the change, because it's important to build that pipeline and talent coming to the company, but it's also important to retain it.
Yes.
If you look at the numbers are pretty staggering with women in the mid-level career, especially within tech. It's a hockey stick getting to that midpoint, and then it falls off a cliff. So we have to make sure we're investing in the talent and in our team members that we have within our companies as well. That's a very big important part.
Also, at work and in your jobs, looking around and, where are there gaps? Where may there not be somebody represented? And as you're out networking, try to recruit them, or and within your teams, go to lunch, get to know people that aren't just within your comfort zone, and build those connections and relationships.
And make sure you understand your company's DEI. Ask the questions. What are the numbers? Because a lot of companies don't want to talk about it because they're not good. So ask the numbers so that you can impact the change.
And if you have power, create opportunities.
There's a great study from McKinsey called Women in the Workplace. And then I think this is the second annual numbers that I saw that came out. And then pretty much it says, kind of at the entry level, it is actually close to 50-50 when you look at majority of the companies out there. Then when you go managers, then you go directors, then even when you get to the VP level of a lot of technology, engineering, STEM type of companies, even at the VP level, you're all of a sudden at single digit percentages of female to male peers. Nonetheless, at the C level, we're like decimal places, right? And so, how do we hold companies accountable for their DE&I strategy? And then what type of measurements that you think that could be put in place to help companies to be successful?
It starts at the top. It starts with the leadership. I mean, I know with IBM, it's a part of our overall strategy. And our CEO put it as a defined KPI that every executive is responsible for bringing on diversity talent at this level. And it's a number that we're held accountable for. So again, understanding and knowing your measurement and having real tangible KPIs that you're going after. Because again, to say we want to be, everyone says, we want to be diverse, we want to grow, but you have to have something tangible that you can hold yourself, not only the company accountable for, but hold the leadership accountable for as well.
I think apart from that, I think there are some other programs that we have within the organization, be it like a mentorship, etc. Breaking barriers, any of those. And I think going in assessing to see how effective are they? How many people, people actually, signed up for this program, and then how they changed their career, what was the trajectory of their career, etc., and how these programs benefited them. I think assessing some of those programs is also another area that we could look at to see how organizations are able to see benefit.
I'd also say speak up.
Yeah,
And it's that male CEO that I mentioned, say, be the voice.
I try to insert myself in spaces where decisions happen. And so if I have a peer that's hiring, hey, I'll join your hiring panel, just because I know that I bring a different perspective and a different element. And that's where I can begin to have different conversations of, well, what about this candidate? Well, what makes the two candidates different? Just to begin to jog some of that cognitive questioning of, okay, well, why am I thinking that one person is more qualified than the other person? So in places where you can be in spaces where decisions are made, make sure that you are in those spaces. Joining your organization's employee resource groups and making sure that you're having the conversations. And if you have a comfort level with a peer and you see something that's going on that make you kind of question it, find constructive ways to maybe engage in a very open dialogue, assuming good intent, not accusatory, but just really trying to build a bridge to help someone else maybe have a different perspective. In each one of those conversations, I do think move the needle, maybe not for that instance, but maybe for the next.
And also be a part of the change as well. If you're in a hiring opportunity, then you should leverage and also everything that we've spoke about, use that as an opportunity as well. Like make sure you're bringing in diversity talent as well. Because if we sit here and say, hey, we want our company to do it, but then as a hiring manager, you're not doing it, then are you, like, what side of the fence are you really on? So.
And check your own biases.
Yeah.
We all have them, and no matter how good of a great of a person you are, just begin to even question yourself at times. Why am I thinking the way that I'm thinking?
Well, that's great. We heard so much wonderful things from you all, and I like to turn the tables over this side. I like to hear from some of you all, and I know that some of you all are repeat volunteers. I would love to hear how has this opportunity to be able to be a volunteer at this event has helped you in your career journeys. And then if you can actually stand up and then come up, I would love that. Join me up here. Anyone?
Oh, you gotta get tons of questions now.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Raise the hand.
So raise your hand. How many of you are repeat volunteers? Yes. Awesome.
Nice.
All right, Daniela.
Oh my gosh, okay.
She's up in the front of the room.
Okay. Oh, don't be afraid. All right.
Don't be afraid. It's healthy.
Yes.
Okay, well, my name is Daniela. This is my third event. I really haven't made much leeway professionally, for a number of reasons, but my very first event, I think it was a social justice one, and I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time, and I was doing it virtually. The funny thing about it is the nonprofit I helped to build a website for as the UX UI designer, I actually have a personal relationship with the owner now, and I actually help her with a lot of her personal things for the nonprofit. I'm not sure if any of the ones who were here for a while remember Open Gates, but I still talk to Miss Shanice. Actually, she's like my godmom at this point. So I met her living in Dallas, and then I moved here last June, and ever since we've been in touch. She has my number, we hang out, met her family, love them, they love me. And then my second event, I was a WordPress developer. That was different because I've never used WordPress before, but I was like, let me try something new. So each time I volunteered, it's been I've done something new. And this time I was actually going for project manager, but then Aaron reached out, was like, hey, I need an EPM. Mind you, at first I was like, no. Something I've been telling myself is that an opportunity will not present itself if I'm not ready.
That's right.
I went from having 7 teams when I first said yes to now being over 12 teams. And I'm just like, you know what? If I don't have the answer, I'm not professing to be a know-it-all, but I am resourceful, so I will find the answer. And if I can't find somebody who knows it, I'm going to do the research. So, that's the growth I've had so far. So.
Would you like? Yeah, I saw you raising your hand. Brittany.
I see you peeking at me. See what else So, hello again, everyone. Hello, panelists. My name is Brittany Banks. As a professional, I am a senior business analyst at Coca-Cola Company. I've been in IT for over 15 years. And as far as volunteering for 48 was last year. Knew about it for years, but had the opportunity last year. Started off as a PM, and then I was invited back 3 times to be an EPM, this time program director. So I say my growth is confirming what I had inside of leading others. I've done it over the course as a volunteer, other ways, always led, always chosen to lead. Professionally, most recently at work, I am leading a small team India. So far as my growth, connecting the two is confirming what I had inside, allowing me to grow as a leader, learning lessons learned. So I really appreciate the opportunities that I have with the organization in general, and people I get to meet or see again. So thank you.